Hello, and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delilah Lugo.
I'm Jason Kwasnicki.
Hey, Jason, what are we talking about today?
Talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake, parentheses, sequel, intermission, DLC.
Yeah, I love the box art. It puts that so succinctly and so well. It's very neat on the box. Parentheses sequel.
I mean, I do consider it like not a spoiler, just a public service awareness. But in all seriousness, because that's the thing that just depresses me about this endeavor the most is
Yeah,
people who haven't played the original and think that this is actually a remake going into it.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about that a little later in the episode because I have noticed some unhinged shit on Reddit. It's been very fun.
Interesting.
Reap the Spoils is a semi-monthly spoiler cast where we play a game or we watch a thing typically related to video games, and then we come here and we talk about it. We're going to spoil the whole thing. We're going to talk about the story, the ending. We're going to talk about the characters, their motivations. We're going to talk about the gameplay and the combat and all the things you can do in whatever the thing is that we're talking about. It's much easier when we just watch something because then there's like no side content to actually that's not necessarily true, but you know, another conversation for another time. So that being said, if you have not played, and I'm going to say the correct title this time, I'm going to say the correct title. If you've not played Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode Intermission, which is included with Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, I highly suggest you pause this episode, go and play that DLC, and then come back and listen to this episode. And, you know, frankly, if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake, you shouldn't play Intermission because why would you play the DLC before you play
And
the base game?
as a side note, if you're going to play it and you're on PS5, make sure that your base 7 remake is the PS5 version. Otherwise,
Oh, yeah.
the PlayStation Store will not let you purchase or download the intermission.
That's because it's not available for PS4. This was
Right,
a PS5
right. It will be on the PS4 store, but you won't see an option to actually purchase yet.
Yeah. Did you make that mistake? Did you accidentally
I
download?
I did not know.
Oh, okay.
So like I was in the PS shop trying to get it, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh shit! Did I not give you fair warning about that? I'm sorry.
Honestly,
no, it's fine. I looked it up online and found out, but
I remember being so confused and annoyed at the way this game was released back when it released that I'm surprised that it's still an issue.
I mean, like the problem, like I guess the problem is just like the way PS4 and PS5 games work on PS5 and like how to navigate the store properly to get to the right thing and then buy the right thing. It's like that's really where the problem is.
Yeah.
I will say Square kind of muddied the waters a bit more because there was also like you could upgrade Final Fantasy VII Remake on PS4 to Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade on PS5, but not if you had the PlayStation Plus version of or release SKU or whatever of Final Fantasy VII Remake, because they gave that to you for free as part of your subscription, and they're not going to let you get the new one, the newer
It's
version
bullshit.
for $10. Which, like, you know, business-wise, I get it, but it just muddied the waters. It made people even more confused than they already were.
Yeah.
But you know, it's pretty easy for me because I just buy discs.
Exactly.
physical elitist.
What makes you say that?
I don't know, the big collection behind.
Yeah. Audio podcast, audio listeners can't see the shelves of shit behind me. Anyway, tangent over. If you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode Intermission or Final Fantasy VII Remake in general, I suggest you pause the episode and go play that. And just for some information, just quick info block, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, the release that this DLC is a part of, released on June 10th, 2021 for the PlayStation 5 and came to PC later that year on December 16th, 2021. Exclusively to the Epic Game Store, if I remember correctly. It might even still be exclusive to the Epic Game Store. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, a lot of people were really upset about that. I'm not a PC gamer. I don't get upset about storefronts too often. Um, I have a Mac, so I just know that nothing is available for my laptop, and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, are we ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Final warning: if you have not played, episode intermission. I keep getting intermission and intergrade mixed up. If you have not played episode intermission, pause, go play it, come back. Okay, time to spoil everything about this DLC. I guess we could just go piece by piece with the. Actually, no, we'll just start off with a general question. What'd you guys think?
This DLC was fun. There's certain extracurricular things that piss me off,
Yeah,
but
yeah, we'll talk
I
about
just
those.
love Yuffie so much. She's easily one of my favorite. Her remake version is she's easily one of my favorite characters. She's very much like Naruto, and I'll get into that later, like her character, but she's just hysterical. She had me dying the whole time, like just cracking up.
If I had to start with something good, and this is the same comment me and many others in my camp had of the base remake game, is that the characters are themselves, or at least faithful to the original, and same goes here. If there's one good thing I'd say is that yeah, Yuffie as a character is pretty much exactly what I imagined she would be. And I always, as a Final Fantasy fan, I always love my ninja slash rogue characters
Yeah.
the best, usually.
Yeah,
So
I was really wondering where you were gonna land on just Yuffie as a character, Jason. Just because you and I have a ton of history with these characters, and uh, I know you're not the biggest fan of remakes, so
no.
um,
But
yeah,
again, like I just said, the one thing that I think everybody can agree on is that leaving aside the plot, the general story, the characters themselves are the characters that we remember from the original game, and Yuffie was no different here.
Yeah, I would argue that they even go into the characters more in the remake. Like they obviously give more time to the characters to like flesh them out more in terms of like different like dialogue options and stuff like that. That like for example, I like Aerith a lot more in the Aerith, whatever, in the remake than I do in the original, just because of how much more depth they added to her. And I feel like they did the same thing with Yuffie.
okay, yeah. I mean, I'm inclined to agree. I she has that bubbly personality. It's great to see. It's great that we're gonna get a Final Fantasy VII product where Yuffie is actually like integrated into the plot. Um,
Yeah.
because she's not so much integrated into the plot in the original as much.
She's optional for people who
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. She's an She was originally intended to be like a she was intended to be a main like an actual party member, like a core party member, that was required to be recruited, and I believe they had to cut her as optional and cut a lot of her content to save on time.
In fact,
Um,
Mark, you know this better than me. My memory is not complete here, but if you do not get Yuffie in the original game, do you even go to Wutai at all?
Well, Wu Tai is completely optional anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Even if you
Yeah,
have her, I think you still can, but I'm not 100% sure. I never play 7 without recruiting Yuffie, so it's like it's not something that I've ever experimented with or even looked up to see. But that is a good question. I'm not 100% sure. Um, but okay, I mean, we could start digging into the ending. And I guess the first big thing is that I kind of forgot until I was writing up my notes. Um, the whole reason Yuffie comes to Midgar is to steal Shinra's rumored ultimate materia. And we find out that that's been put on hold because they were gonna drop the plate on Sector 7. That's a bigger priority. Oh, Jason, you seem like you have thoughts on this.
just it's a stupid plot to give them an excuse to make a DLC with Yuffie in it.
Well,
It's just a MacGuffin quest, but there's no MacGuffin, and then we'll throw in a bunch of random shit that is totally unrelated, and you wouldn't even understand even if you played the original, unless you played ancillary material.
if anything, I think You're right. It is a MacGuffin quest. It is like it's a mission that results in like nothing. Like they
It's
don't
it,
succeed.
it seems more set up for Yuffie to have a character background before the main party meets her in the next game.
more than anything. I think it was a setup, a character set up to place her on the continent.
Right.
Because the question becomes in the original, she's all the way from the western continent of Wutai. What the hell is she doing all the way to the east on the Midgar continent when you find her, when you recruit her? Now, granted,
Right.
I think you can recruit her in any forest past that point in the original. It just has to be in a forest. I think it could be any forest. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Um, but the earliest you can get her is right outside Junin on that eastern continent. So it's like I think I view it as an excuse to put her where she was in the original game, at least at the earliest point you could find her in the original game. Give her an excuse to be out there and so far away from Wutai. I'm not. I don't think it's necessarily like that part doesn't blow me away. But the bigger question I have is, what do you guys think this ultimate materia is? Do you think it has an original game parallel? Do you think it's just another some sort of MacGuffin that they just created to stir something up? Because I think it's going to come back, and I have an idea of what it could be.
Delilah, you want to go first on that?
No, you got it. Go ahead.
Honestly, I don't know because as we've already mentioned, and I just mentioned, talking referencing ancillary material. This is an alternate timeline sequel that is integrating the entire Final Fantasy VII compilation, as we'll get to,
Yeah.
material. So honestly, I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. Maybe it will come back up if they continue to flesh out the Wutai Shinra conflict more, which is what I thought they would do here. But they really don't tell you any more than you find out in the base game, other than the fact that they sent a ninja in to get this ultimate materia. So I honestly don't know.
Isn't wasn't there a materia called Ultimate or
Ultima,
Ultima?
Ultima,
Ultima
yeah.
Yeah, I
materia.
mean, yeah, there was Ultima. I don't I don't really view that as like any as like a tie-in to this. I think she's just calling it the ultimate materia because it's like something Shinra's developing and it's supposed to be
Oh,
really powerful. But I don't know. Like I could be wrong. And I
I'm,
also just realized. Oh, go ahead, Delilah. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say, isn't the ultimate materia then like the black one? If anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could make that argument, right? But they're definitely not just developing that. My theory was going to be that it's the huge materia, but I just realized that the huge materia are not Shinra made. They're natural materia. Um
Mm.
which who knows, the remake or rebirth or this remake trilogy could change that up and make them man-made if they really wanted to. I kind of don't see that happening now, remembering that huge materia were not Shinra made.
Mm.
I also saw a theory that like I a lot of information and evidence pointing to maybe it's going to be the power core for a boss very very late into the original Final Fantasy VII, Proud Claude, which is just a big mech that was seemingly being developed to fight against the weapons. I think that's an interesting theory. It could be, could not be, not really sure.
Yeah, it might be like a side quest that involves that they'll will give Yuffie some more story, but will also involve the super bosses from the original reimagined. So it gives
Yeah,
you more of a actual story, more of a story purpose for hunting down those super bosses.
yeah.
Should they choose to do that, which I'm assuming they will.
Yeah, but you know, it also very well could be nothing. It could just be it could just be like Jason said, a MacGuffin to get Yuffie over there and give
Right.
us some content.
Yeah.
And then it never comes up again. I have a feeling it will come up again. I just don't know as what. So it'll be interesting to see that. And you know what?
Mhm.
We might not even find out in the next game. We might not find out till part 3. Um, whatever that'll be called.
Yeah.
All right, I guess let's continue on with the ending. Uh Nero shows up. Delilah, have you played Dirge of Cerberus before?
Nope, I have
Oh,
not, but I know the characters because my brother played it and I've seen the characters, but I know shit about it. And when I tried to play it myself, I could not. I just could not be bothered.
so
That
on
game
the
that game got shat on a bunch. That game got bad ratings. I remember
Oh
that.
yeah, like it's not a
Yeah,
good game. It's like
yeah.
but here's the thing, it's like a guilty pleasure game. Like I know that game is pretty ass, but I still really enjoy it for whatever reason.
Hey,
Um,
it's like me and Michael Bay Transformer movies, man.
yeah, there you go. This is Dirge of Cerberus is my Michael Bay Transformers movie.
The
It's a
first three.
game
For me, those movies jump the shark at 4 when Mark Wahlberg gets in there.
I don't even
I'm a Shia LaBeouf trilogy purist.
I haven't watched past the first Transformers movie, dude, and I saw it in theaters. I remember nothing about it. Um, other than there's like lots of explosions and shit. Because of course there are. It's a Michael Bay production. But anyway, yeah, okay. So I'm the sole degenerate on this podcast that's played Dirge of Cerberus. All right, so Nero, and Weiss. Whoa, that was a huge surprise. Um, did it mean anything to you guys? Like,
I was
Nope.
just like, oh, they're tying in George Cerberus. I have no idea how or what. I know they're like some elite soldier group, like Secret Service soldier. I don't know, but I know nothing about the characters really, or like what else there is to them.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh, huh, how are
I
they
know
gonna do
very
that?
little about the compilation stuff. I do know that like Weiss was supposed to be more powerful than Sephiroth. So I don't know if that's still going to be canonically, I'm sorry, the case in this, but
they did like this whole thing. Well, well, I would say Weiss is more powerful than Sephiroth because you can beat Sephiroth. It's really fucking hard to
Oh
beat Weiss.
God, yes.
Something we'll talk about way later. But um, the thing that I like about this is that it always rubbed me the wrong way with Dirge of Cerberus, and I guess light spoilers for the exposition of Dirge of Cerberus. It always rubbed me the wrong way that like 3 years after the events of Final Fantasy VII, all of a sudden we're now having to contend with this super secret um highly experimented, highly powerful like black ops unit of the Shinra military called Deep Ground. Like they just come out and you have to fight them in Dirge of Cerberus, and that they're the primary antagonist. Which includes the Sviets, which is Weiss, Nero, and other characters that didn't show up in this DLC. So I feel like actually incorporating them into something that's within the timeline of Final Fantasy VII story makes a lot more sense. It at least makes that reemergence years later a little less jarring because how was that kept a secret for so long? Well, now it's not. Now it's actually something that at least somebody has seen, Yuffie, you know?
Right.
So that's kind of what I like about this. Um, and it was just it was a big surprise. I can't really deny that. It was a huge surprise. Was not expecting to see Dirge of Cerberus Deep Ground characters show up in this DLC.
As the
S-
final boss too. I'm over here thinking
yeah.
Scarlet's the problem, but nope.
Yeah. Well, and it's like interesting because I feel like putting myself in in my own shoes in 2021 when I played this DLC, and they were clearly gearing up for Scarlet to be the main antagonist. It was like, how am I gonna fight Scarlet? And they kind of do have you fight her in that whatever that mech was
Yeah.
that she's fighting in. I can't remember the name already.
yeah,
Um,
the armor suit one.
yeah,
Yeah, I
which
don't
is like
remember. Exo
her
suit. Yeah.
being, huh?
So it was called like Mega Exo or something like that. I don't remember.
I don't
Yeah.
remember, yeah. But like her being the head of advanced weaponry, it makes like the most sense that that's how you would fight her, but I was still thinking like she's just this like hot lady in a red dress with her boobs popping out. Like how are you going to do an effective boss fight against that? Um and then they shock us all with Nero popping up.
Hey man, Final Fantasy 14 does it.
What do you mean Final Fantasy 14 does it? What are you talking about?
Just look at the Last Alliance raid. Lots of hot ladies with the
Oh,
boobs
well,
popping out.
okay. To be fair, Jason, they're fucking gods.
Anyway,
Spoilers, like accidental spoilers for Final Fantasy XIV's.
I was just trying to make it. I was just trying to make a joke. Sorry, folks.
we gotta pivot and talk about what's her name, Nofika, or Menfina. We're gonna talk about all the 12 goddesses. All right.
This
Anyway,
this DLC surely does not shy away from having specific camera angles.
Yes.
I did really love the scene where she was using a Shinra soldier as a footrest.
Oh yeah,
I found that so fucking funny.
that was hysterical.
Jason, did you like that? Did you like that scene?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, back to like Nero and
Yeah. Let's
obviously
talk
they
about
shown
Nero.
Weiss. I'll say that this kind of falls in the same problem that the base remake game had vis-a-vis the original game, where that a lot of these scenes and inclusions don't mean jack shit to you unless you've actually played the source material. And in this case, the source material is a really bad PS2 game that was part of the compilation that even people who love the original FF7 probably didn't play or may have played.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I would say more people that are big Seven fans. I would say more people have played those compilation titles than haven't. That I could be totally wrong, and I have absolutely no metrics to base that off of. But the thing is, if you're a big fan of something, like a huge fan of something, and there's more of that, the majority of fans are going to seek that stuff out. And Jason, I know your whole reason for not, like, you are a strong believer and agreeer with Sakaguchi and his philosophy, which is that these games should have been standalone experiences without any
Connection.
additional uh sorry, what was that?
No, I was just saying connections.
Yeah, like no additional content. Like, you play Final Fantasy VII, you get a complete story, and there's nothing else. And I know you're a bigger believer in that
Yeah,
than
it's
I.
not just that. It's also just that the world building for these games is very clearly just for the story that's being told in those games. It's kind of like the Star Wars problem. The more you try to
Mm,
world build out, the more things start to fall apart.
Yeah, and
And that's
I can
true of a
agree with
lot of
that.
these. It's also true of what was it? For the after years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. I mean, something that I'm not sure we talked about in our Crisis Core episode, which if you haven't listened to, go check it out. Um, you go to towns in Crisis Core that weren't in the original Final Fantasy VII, and you're just kind of sitting there left wondering, like, where is this town? Because
Right,
you
right.
explore the whole map in Final Fantasy VII.
mhm.
So that's like a minor issue that kind of comes up with a lot of these compilation things, and if I recall correctly, I mean, it's been a long time since I played Dirge Cerberus, guys. It's like a guilty pleasure, but I really have not played it in a very long time. Um, I think there's other areas in that game that are new to that game and aren't permeated in the original Final Fantasy VII, which kind of makes me wonder: are they going to add new locations with this remake trilogy? Are we going to be going to places that weren't in the original in Rebirth coming up? I don't know. It's
Yeah,
not something that I'm privy to.
and it makes me wonder how they're going to tie Dirge of Cerberus in, because, like, for example, we got Crisis Core as a remaster. It wasn't really a remake, so that people who didn't play the original can, like, get into speed with who Zack is, who's going to play a role in the remake. And with Dirge of Cerberus, it's like Jason said, for people who play the DLC, there's no context whatsoever if you didn't play it. Like, I was surprised only because I was familiar with the characters, but I don't know anything about them. So are they going to tie it into the remake, or are they going to make a DLC like they did with Yuffie, where that's going to be around it, or are they going to remake Dirge of Cerberus? Like, what are they going to do?
Yeah, and I'll be really interested and curious to see where that goes, and something I think I want to talk about toward the end of the show.
Yeah.
Um, so let's move on to the next big plot point with Nero showing up and you fighting him. He kills Sonon. Oh no! Oh geez. Do we care?
Nope.
Okay, I did care, and it's not because, like, I had all this time with Sonon and whatever. It's just because Yuffie's just so happy-go-lucky, and then to see her like cry at the end, not just because of the weight of like losing him, but also then seeing like what happened to Sector 7. It was just so hard to see that character cry because of her character. So that's why I cared, not so much.
And
One little
that's a
nitpick.
great point. That's a great point. Go ahead.
One little nitpick on that point. I just laughed. I giggled. This isn't like a major thing, a major criticism. But Yuffie somehow gets from like the super secret basement laboratory of the Shinra building and is just able to like walk out into the streets,
Yeah.
I mean,
encountering no resistance.
to be fair, the plate is falling on Sector 7. I think
I
everyone's
know.
kind of distracted.
It's a very small minor nitpick that I just laughed at while I was
I mean,
playing.
I could also make, but I feel like there's certain things you just got to take for granted. Like it's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah, yeah.
ridiculous that
This
even though
this
they
is
have
not
fake
like
IDs, it's clearly two Wu-Tai-in ninjas just waltzing into the Shinra building. They
I
don't
know.
look like they belong. They're not disguised at all. Just
I
kind of
know.
walk in and go to an elevator.
No,
I know,
I know. It's video game logic. I was just pointing it
Yeah.
out because it was funny to me.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's just like I to an extent I agree with you. It is ridiculous, but it's the kind of ridiculous that we just kind of have to accept.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but okay, so Sonon. Let's talk about Sonon because I don't mean to belittle his death, but I feel like we're not this DLC is not terribly long, and he's actually not in like the whole or a good chunk of the first part of it for a while.
Right.
So it's like I don't want to say that like I don't care, and I really like Delilah's point. Like I care more about Yuffie's reaction to it than the actual death itself. But let's talk about like his whole like the plot line that they were going for with him, right? Obviously, you see the flashbacks of Melfi, his sister. She looks a lot like Yuffie, so
Literally
clearly, yeah,
spitting image.
like her hair is a little different. It's a little longer. She doesn't have the headband on, but she looks just like Yuffie.
Yeah.
So clearly that's like the plot line they're going for is she's like his surrogate little sister, or he views her as like someone to protect like his little sister was, and even their names, Melfi and Yuffie, you know,
Right.
it's there's some similarities there. There's very clear parallels that are being drawn to get you to realize that like he's gonna be a protector of her regardless because he couldn't protect his sister. Um, how did you guys feel about this kind of plot and backstory for Sonon?
Eh. He wants retribution for his sister, and I don't know. I feel like Yuffie maybe wanted more because I mean, one, she's like kind of like a character that just wants everyone to simp over her because everyone views her as a child, and she's like, "Please have the hots for me." And so like Sanon viewing her as her little sister, she kept saying, "Like I'm not your little sister. I'm not your little sister." A, because she didn't want him to sacrifice himself for her to get retribution for his sister who he couldn't save, but also B, because like maybe she wanted him to have the hots for her, like she wants everyone else to have the hots for her. But
Right.
other than that, I don't know. It's safe. It's a safe story for a character that we have a little bit of time with.
Yeah, and yeah, that's kind of where I lean toward. Is just yeah, it's very safe. It's like familiar, it's easy, and it's not something that takes a ton to write around for a like 4 to 5 hour DLC.
Yeah.
And on paper, I like this idea. The problem I find is that I end up not caring because I never really was I was never invested in Yuffie and Sonon's relationship or just Sonon generally. He emotes very little. A lot of his line delivery throughout is pretty monotone and flat.
Very.
It would have worked so much better, and they even set it up in just some dialogue that occurs while you're walking around through one of the dungeons where he was the apprentice to Yuffie's father, who Yuffie
Yeah,
very vocally has a bad relationship. It would have been made so much more sense to have the relationship be confrontational and
Mm.
from the get-go, and to see a transformation so that we are more invested when he does. But that's just not the case. He's really just there to be a party member to tank for Yuffie's play style. That's pretty much it.
that that's actually an excellent point. Because I feel like it also would have it also would have been like a really interesting dichotomy with the fact that this DLC adds a new mechanic to the combat, synergy stuff. You
Yeah.
synergize with your party member. So like having them be at odds, adding that mechanic where they have to work together, they have to synergize, kind of goes along with that. It's like a narrative throughput in the gameplay, that I feel like that would have been, yeah, you're right, Jason. That would have been really, that
Especially
would have,
considering Yuffie's personality, like if he was constantly like trying to put her in her place when she gets a little too hot-headed, over the top about herself,
Mhm.
and like tries to remind her of her father's teachings. So he's not necessarily coming from it from like a malintent. It's more like what he was taught by her father, and obviously she has issues with her father. So right there, some conflict drama.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That would have been better for sure.
Yeah, that definitely would have given us more reasons to connect with him.
Yeah.
Instead of him just being like, "All right, you take the lead, Yuffie. Go, boss. You got it."
Yeah.
You know?
Right, I
There
got
was
confused. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Delilah.
no, I was just gonna say there was just one specific line that I really liked from him, and it was, I believe, a recurring line during combat that was delivered very flat, like Jason said, where she's like, "Oh, what word would you use to describe me?" I say legendary, and he goes, "I'd say modest."
Yeah, I really liked that
Like,
too.
it's a good line, but his delivery was just like, "Yeah,
I
you
don't
were
know.
being sarcastic, dude."
In defense of his delivery, and I believe the actor that did the voice for Sonon is Alex Lee.
Mm,
If I recall, in defense of that delivery, like he's clearly, an older guy that's kind of chaperoning a younger, bubbly, loud, and hot-headed child. Um, a lot of cases, he's you could see it as like him humoring her. You could see it as him just kind of just being, keeping his cool with his annoyance with her. Or just like general exasperation. Like, I don't know. I didn't really find many issues with his delivery. I definitely see what you guys are saying. I just didn't really take issue with it.
where it became more problematic for me is when he was literally interfacing with Scarlet, who
Hmm.
was the one who killed his sister, and he was just completely like fine. Whereas Yuffie was the one that was like holding back her anger. You saw her like fist clench and stuff like that. And he did acknowledge, like, I felt the same way too, but we have to like keep it together. I just feel like in that situation, like, how is it that easy if like the whole point of your character at this point is to have retribution for that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I was fact checking myself to make sure I was right about the actor's name.
Oh,
And yeah, I was. Okay. Um, so I mean, so Nero killing Sonon didn't do much for you guys. Do you think we're gonna see Sonon again though?
I think they'll definitely, like I said earlier, this feels like a lot of setup exposition for her in the second part. So I do feel like they'll try to incorporate Sonon going forward as part of her character.
Yeah, like I guess my question is really, do you we think I keep saying, Nero killed him, Nero killed him. Did he actually die? Are they gonna somehow like take him and turn him into another Sviet or something, or some
Wouldn't
sort
be
of Shinra
surprised.
super soldier? What do you guys think?
yeah, that would be a good way to get Yuffie riled up and just bring it back to her story if they're, really trying to like focus on her character more than they did before. But I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it was just a thought that crossed my mind just because of all like Nero's very like he's got all like the cloudy darkness stuff, whatever that may be, like popping around. I kind of crossed my mind like, is he less killing Sonon and more infecting him and going to
Hmm.
corrupt him and turn him into something against his will, That
Yeah.
it remains to be seen, and we don't really have any historical data to base this theory off of. It's just something that crossed my mind.
We didn't see him actually dead, so.
Right. Yeah, we just see like there's that he has that vision of, you know, looking at Melfi, and I think she gives him a Dachau bean, and he can't bite into it because he's weak.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so uh, continuing on with the ending. I mean, Yuffie sees the plate fall. It's very sad. She's very upset. She failed. And then she's riding a chocobo saying, I got to recruit a team. And there we go. Go right into Rebirth. Roll
Yeah.
credits.
Right.
I guess the one other aspect to talk about with this ending is the extra scene that they add kind of for the end of Remake, or a continuation of that ending, when the Avalanche crew, as I call them in the notes, is making their way to Calm. Did you guys enjoy this additional bit of whatever?
I thought like you're talking about the end credit scene, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah, where
with
they're walking
with
down the
Yeah.
road.
Cloud, Aerith,
Yeah.
Tifa, Barrett, and Red 13 are trying to hitchhike.
I thought it was cute how Tifa was teaching Aerith how to hitchhike. That was adorable.
Yeah. And guys, did you get excited when Chocobo Bill is who picked them up? I got excited. Jason, come on, man. It's Chocobo Bill.
No, I know why you would get excited. It just didn't really affect me in any way. But I will agree with what Delilah said. You know, like those character interactions again, because the one, you know, in from my perspective, the one really good thing I could say about this endeavor generally is that they got the characters right, at least. So those character interactions in isolation, of course, it's good to see. You know, it was good to see. We briefly saw or see Barrett and Tifa from around the corner as Yuffie earlier, and was a good scene in my mind as well. So anytime it's kind of
Oh
just like the
yeah.
characters in isolation and their interactions and the chemistry, yeah, that works nicely.
Yeah, I guess that's something that I didn't really write down or note or anything. This DLC takes place between um them the party, Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett, blowing up Mako Reactor 5, and the fall of the plate on Sector 7. That's
Hmm.
entirely the timeline for this DLC. Um and yeah, I completely forgot about that scene. Um and you see Tifa, there's rumors about Don Corneo's mansion, and she's like, I'm going to check it out, and she runs off. And you have to fight talent scouts, like looking for people to bring to Don Corneo.
Right.
Uh
Kind of funny in the darkest way possible. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit. Also, did you guys try going into Seventh Heaven?
Mm-mm. No.
It won't let you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if I could. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. If you try there again, if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake, this is your own fault. But fate stops you. There's like a
God
Oh.
pulse
damn
of
it.
energy that keeps Yuffie from entering Seventh Heaven.
Wow.
Um because she doesn't meet them that early. She doesn't meet them
Yeah.
until later.
That's
I might have
interesting.
turned the game off and uninstalled had I actually tried.
Oh, man. I mean, I feel like they didn't need to do that, right? Like her going into the bar doesn't necessarily mean she meets them, or doesn't necessarily mean there's any meaningful interaction there. Um,
Yeah.
but they did.
She's
That
also
kind of.
wearing like the Moogle costume at that point, isn't she?
I think she's still wearing
Yes.
the
So
Moogle
you could have had
costume.
an in-universe, in-game excuse, but I don't even care about her being able to go on the seventh heaven. It's just the fact that
The fate thing.
The
the
fate
Yeah,
is
fucking
controlling
ghosts.
everything.
yeah. um, hey, Yuffie does meet at least Jesse and Wedge if
Yeah.
you
Yes,
play
Fort
yes.
all the
Condor.
Fort Condor matches. It's like a pretty meaningless interaction, but she plays some Fort Condor with them.
Yeah, they're like the hard. I think Jesse's like the hardest
No,
Fort Condor
I think
opponent. Oh
no,
no, Chadley. Duh.
Chadley
Yeah,
is, yeah.
Chadley's the master. Yeah.
I was thinking Wedge was the final one, and I think he's the one you have to do before Chadley, like right
Yeah.
before Chadley. Um, yeah, but speaking of which, fucking Chadley, what a dork. He's coming back in Remake, and I just Okay, sure. Didn't we find out he's like a
Everybody's
robot
come.
or something in
Yeah,
Remake?
he was created by
Yeah,
Hojo.
Right.
yeah. Everybody's coming
Cool.
back because now Final Fantasy VII is like Star Wars. Nobody's ever really gone.
Yeah.
Ah! Um,
It's kind of true.
one moment.
Standing in complete contrast to the theme of the original game.
Yeah. Yeah, like going out of this and talking just briefly about like some of the Rebirth trailers that have popped up, like we see what's her name, Naya, one of the Avalanche NPCs
Hmm.
that helps you in this DLC. I think her name is Naya, but
Yeah,
like
it sounds
yeah,
right.
she's gonna be in Rebirth. I think the other ones, Billy Bob, Polk, and Zizia are coming back probably too. Um, I put them in the notes. I don't think any of us really have much to say other than it's hilarious that there's a canonical character in Final Fantasy VII named Billy Bob.
Yeah.
Um, just incredible stuff. There's one more thing we have to talk about with the ending, and that's the extra scene with Zack.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so I guess this is like giving people who haven't played the Crisis Core context into how much he loves Aerith, because that's his little boo thing.
Well, there's like all the, for lack of better words, fuckery going on with fate being challenged and Zack there being a timeline or a branch of whatever whatever we want to call it, because we don't really know yet. No one really knows yet what that's all about. But there seems to be some universe where Zack survives, and that's a continuation of that. And it's fun seeing him like struggle to find the words that he's gonna say to Aerith when he walks in.
Yeah, it's cute.
And the big shock is him opening the door saying I'm back, and it's seemingly refugees uh taking refuge just in there from I guess the if I don't really know if in that timeline if the plate still fell. It's seemingly just
Mm,
people just taking refuge in the church, and no Aerith to be found as far as we can tell.
yeah.
um do anything for you? Did it at least like spark your interest for more Zack stuff coming up in Rebirth, or
It's just I'm not like one to create theories, but it makes me wonder at what point he's coming in and what they're gonna do with that, like how he's gonna fit in. Were they at the church taking refuge, like you said, because of the plate falling, or is this like after she dies?
yeah, I mean, yeah, we don't know. Well, if like if it's right fresh after him coming back to Midgar, it would be 5 years before any five. No, no, not 5 years. Sorry, it would be like right before the events of Final Fantasy VII. So like theoretically, she should still be alive, but where is she? She's not there at the church. What's the deal?
Yeah.
Um, Jason.
You know my feelings on this. I already said it in our remake discussion. I said it in our Crisis Core discussion. Zack on his own and as a character is extraordinarily boring. His function in the original story is to service other characters' stories and to reinforce the themes of the overall story. He There's no reason other than fan service to have him in here and to be like, "Oh, point and look, I know that guy." But
Oh, I
I
mean,
audibly groaned when I saw that, and that's that.
I think it's too, I personally I think it's just too soon to judge. It's too soon to determine that it's not. I don't think it's just fan service, right? Like they're clearly trying to, while remaking Seven, they're also trying to to do something new with it, which is why at the top of the show you called this a sequel, because you're right. This is a product that you should not play without the context of the original work, because it's doing new things and it's very aware of that fact. It's very aware, which is why the anecdote I want to bring up is seeing people on the Final Fantasy VII Remake subreddit ask questions about the Rebirth demo, like, wait a second, where's Zack in this demo? Why aren't we seeing him? It's, I guess, spoilers for the original Final Fantasy VII, but yeah, there's people that are that only played Crisis Core and Final Fantasy VII Remake, didn't play the original, don't know the whole twist that you're talking about, Zack being there to service other characters, and asking questions. It's like, no, that's because these are sequels.
And that goes back
This
to
is a
what I
sequel
said at the
series.
top, is it's the most depressing aspect of this whole endeavor, is that so many people think this is a remake. They don't want to play the blocky original that was out from the PS1.
I mean,
It's
but
just sad.
I think you and I have differing opinions on why it's sad, because I have a feeling you think it's sad because you just wanted a straight remake of the original game.
It's not,
Whereas,
no. So I want to be very clear about this, and try to be quick, because change. I'm okay with changes, additions. There were changes and things I liked about remake, and we talked about those in our discussion. Go see our discussion there. Um, this past year, go listen to our Resident Evil 4 remake, which I was very, very apprehensive about,
yeah,
and I
me
ended
too.
up liking more. There were some changes I disliked, but I liked more of the changes than I disliked. Um, my biggest problem is that, as I mentioned briefly earlier, is not only did they change it, and not only is it a sequel, not a remake, but the thematic elements and the overall story are in stark contrast to the thematic elements and story of the original. That's what irritates me, especially knowing the history of how that story came to be. There's very emotional aspects tied to the creators, particularly Sakaguchi, who
Yeah.
came up with a lot of that following his mother's death. So it's almost like not just, you know, not being a pure remake, but almost spitting in the original vision of the original artists.
I mean, it's pretty far removed from Sakaguchi at this point, that's for sure.
Mm.
I think, it's kind of what you get with just having a modern, a very modern remake, however many years removed from the original work, and that original work wasn't like its own massive sub franchise, so it had its own message, it had its own themes, and things to say, and this is trying to retell those things while also saying new things at the forefront, and that's, I would definitely say, no pun intended, that's definitely clouding the message a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, um, but yeah, I think the bigger shame is just the thing that Square uh will always say, or any game company for that matter will always say, in response to the question, do I need to play the original Final Fantasy VII before I play this? And they'll always say, no, you can
Yes.
play this. We designed it. We created it for newcomers and veterans alike. And that's
Mhm.
just, and any veteran, anyone that's played Final Fantasy VII and then Final Fantasy VII Remake would tell you that's simply not true.
Yeah, and that goes
It's,
back to what we mentioned earlier. A lot of this is meaningless if you didn't play the original.
yeah. Even,
I
even
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead,
No, I
Dahlia.
was just gonna say I just hope that they do tie it together well, and this doesn't become like another product of multiple timeline fuckery that a lot of a lot of IP suffer from, and that they do explain it for people who maybe didn't play the original at some point.
I really can't wait for that part in Rebirth when Doctor Strange is going to show up and fix everything.
No, man,
No, that's what the fate does. Our
Shinra from Final Fantasy X is going to teleport in, and
Yeah, that's what the ultimate materia is. It's to summon Shinra from Final
Imagine.
Fantasy X too.
That's
Um,
hysterical.
okay, this accidentally turned into a broader like Final Fantasy VII compilation podcast, I guess. But it was important to talk
It's
about
gonna
that
be
Zack
all we're
scene.
talking about for a
it's hard to
while.
Yeah,
talk. It's
true.
hard to talk about any of this
No, you're absolutely right.
stuff without talking about everything compilation
Yeah.
original. Yeah.
I mean, luckily, I think our next episode will be a little easier to keep it reined in, but we'll get
Yes.
to that. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to unpack with the ending of this game. And pretty much all its characters that are worth talking about. We've pretty much covered all that. You guys good to move on from story stuff and talk some gameplay things?
Um, I
There's not
guess
like a ton.
yeah, I guess I just wanted to just wrap up some my feelings on Yuffie because I kind of cut it off in the beginning.
Oh, sure.
Is like she reminds me so much of like a Shonen Jump protagonist,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
Goku or Naruto. She's stupid, but like in a funny way. She's clumsy, but she's also super confident and loud and hot-headed. And she even says lines that like Naruto would say, like "believe it." I like that she gets super Golem-y when it comes to material. Like she's like, "Oh, my precious," and she's hysterical. Like she's not trying to be funny. Obviously, she's just an idiot. And I say that in an endearing way, not in a like something that you say to like a friend who does the stupidest things, but it's just so like funny and endearing. Um, for example, when I think it was Billy Bob or one of the Avalanche people that said to her like ignorance is bliss. Actually, it might have been Sonon. I don't remember, whoever it was. And she took it as a diss. She was like, "Wait, what did you say to me?" Like,
Yeah.
just like random little encounters like that just make her character just so like I love it. Like her, Barrett, and Jesse, to be honest, are like my favorites in this
They
remake,
even
at
they
least.
even gave her one of those quirks that you see a lot in those shonen battle mangas, where she has the nut from, I forget what it's called, or the bean. Sorry, not
Senzubin?
nut. Yeah, the bean that only she
The
can
Chow
bite, and
Bean.
every time she gives it to somebody, there's that funny little. I actually did giggle a bit, and that's what I was
Yeah.
saying earlier.
I
Like
was
the
about to bring
character
that.
quirk. Yeah,
Sorry.
no. That's all I had to say. Is like like she was saying. Yuffie as a character is definitely like the standout part of this, as were the characters in the base remake. Yeah.
Yeah, really enjoyed the Chow Bean scene where no one can bite into one because I guess Wu Tai teeth are just built different.
They
They've
are
got
built
more
different.
they've got they've got more calcium or something. I have no
Yeah.
idea.
And
Um
just one other line she said that had me on the floor is I think Chadley was like, "Oh, do you know what a VR stimulation module is?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, it's a thing that stimulates modulation." And then she's like, "Nah, I don't have time to play with some stimulator." And I'm just like, she is hysterical. Like I love her so much. Can't wait
Yeah.
to get her more in the more of her in the remake.
Yeah, it'll be very fun to see how she like integrates as like the comic relief for the main party. Um
Yeah.
and
I'm guessing Delilah's going to hard lock her into the party.
oh yeah.
Oh god. If it makes combat sense, because I'm very like, I want to do all the hard stuff and play it on
Yeah.
hard mode, so it would depend if it makes combat sense, but in terms of like her dialogue, oh yeah, I would love to have her there.
Well, hey, speaking of combat, what did you guys think of Yuffie's gameplay style?
She felt OP
Oh,
because like
well, maybe that comes down to it just being her and Sonon, and you're only focused on one character, so that might be why. But go ahead, elaborate.
no, I was just gonna say like the synergy moves. I'm glad that they're adding it in the remake. It definitely helps like add DPS to whatever you're doing or pressure, or stagger gauge or whatever. But the fact that she could it might be a materia actually that's was updated for this DLC or added to this DLC, I'm not sure, but where you could use the base weapon and do elemental damage without actually having to switch to like use spells to do elemental damage.
Oh,
So
you're
like
talking about her ninjutsu abilities or
well,
ninjutsu?
she had the
Ninjutsu?
ninjutsu abilities as well. You could do the
Yeah,
fire ninjutsu or the wind ninjutsu, and then
yeah.
also I can't maybe it's a synergy material. It's one of the blue ones, where if you equip it with a element, just your regular attack does elemental
Oh
damage.
no, that was in the original.
That was in the
Frankly,
original.
that yeah, or in yeah, that frankly it was the only way it was like the best materia. Anytime someone plays remake, I always tell them, "Okay, make sure you get the elemental materia because I think there's only two of them you can get and they are the best materia in that game
Yeah,
because yeah, it add an element onto your base attack and exploit those weaknesses. There's only 4 elements, so it makes it practically makes it a necessity for hard mode and
Yeah.
for and for any of the super bosses or harder content.
Right.
But yeah, that was in base remake, and it there was at least one to be found in intermission.
Right. Then I think how I used it is that I used an element that she didn't have on her ninjutsu, and that's why it
Yeah,
felt like I just had all the elements at my disposal, which made her feel OP.
yeah. Or alternatively, you could like put that on Sonon's attack, so he's doing elemental damage while Yuffie can do it with her ninjutsu. You know, there's just there was a lot of really good strategy with her combat style,
Mhm.
because you have to kind of balance uh using ranged attacks while going up close and personal, exploiting the fact that she has inherent elements to use. I really enjoyed it. Jason, as a big criticizer of remakes combat, what did you think?
I basically came away with the same general thoughts, which for those who haven't listened to our remake discussions, basically it by trying to be simultaneously an action game and turn-based game, or taking elements of turn-based combat from the originals, it it doesn't fail, but it doesn't like it's not great either. It's just serviceable, and a lot of the same micro issues um, I encountered here as well. I even did several battles, both just not random encounters, but minor encounters and boss battles. I would experiment with parrying system, dodging systems, just the inconsistencies of the windows for those made them useless. The weaknesses I would try to exploit and realize I wasn't doing any more damage, and also using spell times. There's so much micro shit I can get into. It just, especially after just playing 16 earlier this or last year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
I said it in the remake discussion. It's almost like Yoshi P listened to our remake discussion. I said you got to pick lane. You got to either be a good action game or a good tactical turn-based game, and they chose to do the earlier with some light RPG elements. And
I
whatever
don't
your criticisms of 16's combat, I find it vastly superior to this.
I mean, so
And there are
let
criticisms to be made of 16's combat.
oh yeah. I mean, I was just about to say, yeah, 16 went all out action, but also got rid of a lot of intricacies with any of like typical Final Fantasy combat, like elemental weaknesses and the like. But that aside, I let it be known, like I don't think Delilah and I necessarily agree with most of that. I definitely don't, because I think the combat is more than serviceable. I think it's really good. I did have more trouble with this DLC than I remember having, and maybe it's just because I was like in my replay recently.
Mhm.
I had more trouble with the dodge windows. Maybe I'm just out of practice. Um,
Dodge
but
and parry and guard are useless when you actually break down and find the meta that's the best. It's just go on attack. Don't even bother, because you're going to waste more. It's keeping your distance, basically, which you can just do by running. And yeah, dodge is effectively just a way, not really to dodge attacks, but to just keep your distance. Especially with Yuffie's playstyle, kiting is so important, and that's why this is
yeah,
so boring. You're just kiting and then wait till it says pressure and then just fucking go all out.
maybe part of the problem is just that you spend this entire DLC only playing as one character, only controlling one character. Because like it is very different if you're playing as, say, Cloud. His play style is super different from Yuffie's, who's super different from like Barrett's, from Tifa's, and so on and so forth. Um, I also think like I- it's really important to use the shortcut system with this combat. Yuffie has an ability where if you time it right, it's a dodge, and if she follows it up with an attack, and if you don't if you have to pause, if you have to go into the menu to use that, like that's not ideal for anyone. But if you have it on a shortcut and you can, quick react with that ability when something's coming your way, like that's ideal. And that, I draw a lot of similarities with this combat with Kingdom Hearts. And I know you also don't like Kingdom Hearts' combat, Jason. I think it's, at least for the earlier games, Kingdom Hearts combat, super great, especially Kingdom Hearts 2. It is an extremely tight action RPG. With very, very technical combat. Maybe more than you're willing to give it credit for. But another conversation for another time. Um, I don't know. I think that I think Yuffie was a lot of fun to play as, and I think maybe just the bigger problem is just that you don't ever get to play as Sonon. You just kind of give him orders. It could have been
And
interesting to let you play as him. Maybe that also would have let us care about him a little more, have a more direct connection to him.
and that also kind of brings up other problems, which is in the base remake, it puts such an emphasis on you having to actually switch and
Yeah.
manually control characters because the AI is dog shit. So when you're not controlling your characters directly, and I got excited when it introduced this order system for Sonon because I thought it was trying to address that problem. The problem is you can only control what abilities he uses via
Yeah.
ATB. There's no like kind of gambit system like from 12 where you can
Mhm.
tell him, play defensively, play aggressively, provoke this guy so you can actually be a tank. If you're not doing anything to direct, like giving any action orders, and I noticed this in the final boss with Nero, like he's just walking around guarding aimlessly in no direction while I'm like clamped and locked in and just getting stun locked and damaged to death, which again, more design issues with it being an action game. And it doesn't, you get stun locked so much in this, it just doesn't feel good to play.
Yeah.
It, sorry, go ahead.
No. I didn't mean to cut you off. I mean, I'll agree with that, and I think a lot of that just comes down to the dodge windows just being a little muddy and hard to figure out.
Well, yeah, you don't have like iframes like you would in a Souls game or other, character action games. Also, the parry windows are different from each attack. So sometimes it's when the models actually hit each character models actually hit each other. Sometimes it's when a special effect. And I actually stopped and died multiple times in normal battles to suss out this. There is no consistent. This is when you need to parry, which is why I say parry is useless because it differs based on what attack an individual enemy is using.
Yeah.
So
Parry
again,
was
it's
that was a
It's a
materia,
I
right?
was just gonna say that the other issue is that a lot of these things that you're talking about are materia. Like there's a parry materia, there's deadly dodge materia, there's
which I had all these, yeah.
there's actually a materia that you can equip on either of them where it takes the aggro or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a yellow one. But again, it's like tied behind materia, which you want to use the best materia, not a materia that's going to help you do a mechanic that probably should just be baked into the regular action combat. But the other issue with Yuffie is I liked it, by the way. I had a lot of fun playing as her, especially on normal mode. But there's a hidden mechanic for her that they never explain in the game, which is the use of her shuriken. Like you have to like throw her shuriken and then like recall it to then teleport to wherever the shuriken was. And that's like a really useful mechanic for literally everything, especially when you get to hard mode or like some of the harder boss fights or challenges and stuff like that. And you if you throw the shuriken at an enemy and do like the wind ability, it does more damage than if you just did the wind special on its own. But again, they don't explain that to you. So like the fact that there is this hidden mechanic makes her combat feel a little bit more like confusing and like just
Well,
like yeah.
I think they do at least tell you that you throw the shuriken and then and when you go to recall I think they do tell you in like the little tutorial window that pops up teaching you her
Yeah.
mechanics.
They
I
they
think it does
do
at least tell you
tell you
that
about
it brings you there.
ninjutsus, yeah.
But the thing it definitely doesn't tell you about like how some of the abilities work. Like the thing I didn't realize until I accidentally did it was there's that one attack, there's that one ability that she has where she creates like a windstorm, and the thing, I think that's what you're referring to, Delilah, is like I didn't
Yes.
realize that if you have your shuriken thrown out, yeah, if you use that ability, it doesn't propagate where Yuffie is, it propagates where her shuriken is at the time. So if she throws it at an enemy and then uses that attack, it's gonna whirlwind on the enemy where the shuriken is, which is extremely useful, especially for one of the
Yes.
mini games.
They
Yeah.
also don't make it totally clear that it's magic damage when you're doing the ninjutsus,
Oh, I thought
ranged
no, I
as
think they
opposed
made
to
that clear.
physical. Maybe I missed it and I'm just an idiot then. But
Well,
it's like
the
it's
fire
super
one's
it's
called fire ninjutsu. The wind one is just called windstorm.
Hey, would it really be a game that we talk about on the show if it doesn't pass the Kwasniaki test of Jason not reading things?
Well, like I said, I saw like you just said about the intro teaching you how to throw it and
Yeah,
grab it back and
I'm
do the
just I'm
ninjutsus. I saw that. I never saw anywhere until I kind of sussed it out myself that you were dealing different types of damage.
oh, okay. I was mostly just giving you grief, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Mm.
But
um,
yeah, just overall, like I was just frustrated by unoptimized, and there's other things. Camera being zoomed in too much, you don't get a sense of the battlefield. You don't get there's no indicator of aggro, which makes it frustrating when you're trying to set up Sonon as the tank to draw away the enemies. There's just a lot of different things that all pile up to make it like, in my opinion, a suboptimal action game and not as tactically invigorating as just a pure turn-based system.
Mhm.
I don't know, man. Can't say I agree, but that's that's what you come to read the spoils for, for Jason and I to just disagree on Final Fantasy things.
Yeah,
Um,
the
Go
one
ahead,
thing I
Delaz.
will say is the combat becomes exponentially frustrating when you're doing the Shinra challenges. And I guess that gets into like side content a little
Yeah,
bit.
let's go into it.
It's just stupid. The pride and joy, like I hate when I max out a character, I do everything in a game, and I still need to grind specific materia just to have the meta for a specific fight. And then that specific meta doesn't work for the next fight. Or I get an item that's really awesome, like the Goddamn Ring, and I can't fucking use it effectively on the next big bad fight. And so it's like, what's the point of earning this? It's just there. I mean, I guess to play the game again, I have no interest in doing that. I already played the game on hard mode and normal mode. I have this Goddamn Ring. I want to be able to use it. So I don't like having to use specific materia to do specific things to succeed. And I'd like to be able to have some kind of autonomy over my playstyle, and that is just not allowed when you get to those challenges.
I mean, to broaden it out a little bit, like I just don't like when I have to use a very specific strategy,
Yeah.
like that it might include like a very specific materia setup or whatever, and like that's the only logical way you're gonna beat that fight.
Like the final battle, the final boss of Nero, where it's just spam healing all the time
I
because
mean
you just got
that
dots on you all the time.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's not really what I mean. I don't think I wouldn't call that a strategy. Is to just keep yourself healed. I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty common strategy for any video game.
I didn't use healing materia the entire DLC. Just used
Okay.
potions and mega potions, or mega potions and high potions.
Oh, see,
So I
I
didn't even
always
have it
had
equipped.
heal. I
And
always
then
had heal and magnify linked, so I could heal both of them at the same time.
so basically what happened is I played it a few times and realized why I was losing health. And on the next replay, I equipped all my healing materia and won. No problem.
Hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show what I'm saying is it lacks the depth of, and it goes to what Delilah's now saying of
well,
not just skill expression, but also a lack of skill expression, but a lack of tactical expression
I don't
and
know, Jason.
strategic expression.
I don't think suddenly needing to equip healing materia means that the game is broken. I don't agree with that, and I think that the combat is better than you're giving it credit for. I just think that I don't know. I'd have to see what you're doing that makes you not like the combat so much to pinpoint why that may be. Because I think it's really technically good. It's not perfect. It's got some hiccups. It's got some issues, but it's really technically good. Um, what what I think Delilah is talking about, and what I all like what we were talking about in Slack the other day is when a fight like Weiss, who is much worse than the Pride and Joy prototype, you have to use a very specific strategy in order to beat it. Like you have to equip, I think, Deadly Dodge on Tifa and just have her slide around the arena until you find like specific openings to cast specific spells on it. Like the strategy that you have to employ is so specific that the game might as well just tell you that that's what you have to do, because there's really there in that case there's no freedom of expression. In other fights, even hard fights, there can be a lot of freedom of expression. but not with some of these super bosses. With some of these super bosses, it's ridiculous how specific you have to
Yeah.
be with what you're doing. And it's not even a problem exclusive to this game. There's one of the Kingdom Hearts games has a boss. It's largely the reason I don't really care much for this Kingdom Hearts game. It's Birth by Sleep for anyone that cares. I don't care much for Birth by Sleep. Why? Because a lot of the bosses require you to do really specific shit to beat them, and there's not really any other way to do it.
Yeah, I hate that so much.
And again,
And
you guys. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Delilah.
no, I was just gonna say it's like it's so specific. Like Weiss does not take any damage whatsoever until you stagger him, and there's a very specific thing that you have to do to get his pressure meter up so that you can eventually stagger him. And then even after he's staggered, and you have to do like all these crazy moves to maximize DPS. And then when he's finally staggered, he gets his second phase. He gets like this shield that he like heals again. So then you have to get that down. If you hopefully you don't want to make it to that phase really, but the strategy again is very specific to make it to that phase. Then you make it to that phase. Let's say you spam lightning, whatever, you get him down. His third phase is an insta kill. So it's like, why even have the third phase if like when you get there you're just basically dead. It wasn't even hard. I didn't feel at all frustrated by its difficulty. I was just annoyed that I was forced to play this game a specific way that I never had to in the entire remake. It was just
And
dumb.
that really just comes down to design problems with very specific pieces of content, because I don't feel that way about nearly anything else. It's just like the really tough shit that they try to make and try to force you to play by their rules,
Yeah.
instead of forge your own path. And I'm sure there's people that have come up with different strategies and done it, a lot less stupidly. Um, but the amount of experimentation you probably have to do, and probably the amount of grinding you have to do, it's depending on what materia you use, it's just like that's the part that sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think right now you got, because you guys played hard mode and did these super bosses, which I did not. I'm not even talking about that. I was
Yeah.
just talking about the base game. So I have no knowledge of what you guys are talking about specifically with that specific fight.
Right. It's just that this, it comes with this DLC, and it
Yeah,
was like the hardest fight in the game, and it's not hard because it's a challenging fight and you really got to think about what you have to do. It's hard because you have to use this really specific strategy, or you basically have no chance.
Yeah.
Um, but that being said, yeah, mean, I really think the combat is technically very sound. Like I said, there's some issues, but there's certain just design aspects with certain fights and certain encounters that just suck.
Yeah.
And Weiss is like the most egregious of them all.
Yeah.
But okay, let's talk about a bit about the side content, and then let's wrap up the show. I mean, there's just a few things to talk about. I mean, what did you guys think of Fort Condor? Did you
better
like
than
this
the main
iteration?
combat. I spent so much more time. I honestly spent an additional hour just playing. That was such a fun little mini game. Again, better than the actual combat because it was consistent. I knew what the rules were, and I didn't have to redo each fight with different enemies to learn when I could guard or parry their move sets and the animations. And I didn't have to fight the camera, and the camera wasn't zoomed in up Yuffie's ass so that I couldn't be aware of the game space and all these other issues I had with the main thing. It was just a board game, strategic placement, learning the value of each of the units, how they countered. It was super fun and addictive.
One
And I
day,
almost
I really just want to watch you play a game that we're talking about, just to see how, because I didn't have any camera issues. I think the combat is really good. I just want to watch you play someday, Jason. I swear.
I did have camera issues, especially with the Shinra box challenge, but
Oh, well, the Shinra box challenge
yeah.
is a whole other story. It really, I feel like that comes down to the lock on more than anything, and we'll talk about that. But
Yeah.
Jason, I am glad you liked Fort Condor.
Fort Condor is
Um,
so fun.
yeah, I do. It does make me a little nervous that like it won't be a thing in Rebirth, like it won't be an actual location or plot point. Um, what was that?
no, I thought you meant the mini game, and I was gonna say how like the entire trailer for Rebirth was just mini games, but I get what you're saying. The
Yeah,
actual
like
Fort Condor in the story, yeah,
right, like here it's just a mini. It's just like a little tabletop like mini game. In Final Fantasy VII, it was a location and there
right.
were stakes. And I hope that that's not sacrifice to just turn it into a mini game, because there was a huge materia there in the original. You had to go and protect it, and then there was more. There was some significance to it. So I hope that's not lost. But it was a fun mini game. And then
I'd be
Shinra, huh?
I was gonna say I'd be fine to play it again so they can
Yeah,
keep it in the main game.
yeah. Just keep giving us Fort Condor. I'm good with that. Um, yeah. The other one was the Shinra Box Buster.
I hated it. Oh god.
I did have a lot of trouble getting the max score on the soldier challenge.
Yeah, it was stupid. You had to literally get every single box, and you had a very limited amount of time, and they had the nerve to put one box far away behind a barrier that was a 1500 box. Like there was only you can only do banishment on it. Again, like I hate when I have to do a specific thing to succeed.
What was even worse was that they hid like two smaller boxes right at the beginning behind you.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that, you get to the end and you have you're like 400 points short. Like, where the fuck are these other boxes? They're right
Yeah.
at the start. It's like, that's so evil.
Yeah.
Jason, did you engage with this one at all?
Talking about the one when you're just in the dungeon and you go through, and what's his face? One of the forgettable Avalanche NPCs gives you a note to break all the boxes. Is that what we're talking about?
No. This is actually in the second chapter in the Shinra building.
Yeah, that's.
Um,
I think that's what I'm talking about.
no, you're
Maybe
talking
I'm not.
about in the first
Okay.
chapter when you're chasing after him.
Oh, you're talking about it when that optional room opens up to do the challenge. Yeah. Okay.
And
No.
you can get materia as a reward. No, you didn't do that.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, fun. Okay. Um,
As you can tell from the way I'm talking about this, not much interest in me to engage with, aside from doing the Fort Condor because I was confused as to how to progress the actual main story.
yeah,
So I was just talking to people.
I think it kind of forced you to do like some of the side quests.
Yeah,
Like
it
the
forced
other,
you to talk with Chadley to get the VR thing. Yeah.
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 And also like it's a little mix match making the summon in this DLC Ramu. I feel like Ramu should have been in the base game and Leviathan should have been saved for this
Mhm.
DLC. Considering Leviathan is of significance to Wutai. It's kind
I didn't
of
even think
odd that
about
they
that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know why they didn't well maybe when they were developing Remake they didn't initially plan to make this DLC and they had already put Leviathan in the base game but not Ramu, so I don't know. I just thought it was a little silly. He was the only summon materia besides like the pre-order ones that you could use in this DLC.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an odd choice. Um, what about I guess the other piece of side content besides like the combat sim, which we talked a bit about, Ramu, the happy turtle flyer quest.
That was fun, I guess. An
Did you
opportunity to walk around and listen to the silly music.
did you enjoy the fucking like speed metal happy turtle theme song that played in
Yeah.
the one area?
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Um,
fun.
Did you do the side quest, Jason?
I did a couple of them. I didn't finish it though.
Okay, this is like
I know what you're talking about with the speed metal though. Yeah.
yeah. I guess because in the original game there was like a side quest to find all 6 happy turtle flyers throughout the world, and then when you go to Wutai you get like a reward from the happy turtle. I guess this was kind of their way of incorporating that into something, but they can't spread it out across multiple games. So it worked well enough for me, and I overall enjoyed it. Um,
Yeah, it was fun.
So, yeah, I guess that's just about everything we have to talk about. I mean, are you guys excited for Rebirth?
I'm so excited for Rebirth. My most
Jason?
anticipated game, but mostly because like it's the only game I can guarantee is coming out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Indifferent again. In
Jason,
my mind, it's just more 7 compilation shit, and I've never been excited about really any of the compilation stuff
Well, how about I pose this question? Are you excited to talk to us about Rebirth?
Oh, sure. That'll be a good old time having to be the asshole.
Oh, come on! You're not an asshole just for having just for having opinions.
I know, I know.
We
I
we
jest.
love hearing them, even if I disagree with most of what you have to say. Even and
I
that's not even
jest.
true of this episode. That's not even true of this episode. I feel like we agreed on
No,
a lot.
I'm more just poking fun at myself.
I
Because if
know.
there's a negative opinion to be had, it's usually me.
And our reviewers and commenters will surely remind us of that.
Yep.
Okay, a really softball final question just to get us to wrapping this up. How long do you think we have until a Dirge of Cerberus remaster?
I'm so sorry I did not read the notes and I realized I was initiating that conversation early on.
It's okay. It's all right.
Um,
I
we need something to explain it for people like me who have not played Dirge of Cerberus, please.
I don't think it's gonna come until after part 3 because I feel like Crisis Core kind of made sense to put out after Remake because it's a prequel and it gives you context for that. Even if it kind of made a lot of people that haven't played the original game confused, which that's more on them, but still. Dirge of Cerberus being something that takes place 3 years after the original game. Like the original game, that game's events happened. So to put out Dirge of Cerberus before this remake trilogy is complete, it might just people might view it as like, oh, it's spoiled like the end of this trilogy for me. I kind of don't expect it until after part 3 is out. Um,
That makes sense.
even though
Yeah.
I so badly want it sooner. If for nothing else than to just make Jason play it so we could talk about it.
I mean, from a purely business perspective, that it makes sense just because they're already milking one quote unquote remake into a trilogy, and then you can pad it out with DLC and remasters like they did with Crisis Core in between to keep that money flowing. So it makes
Man.
sense that it would come out after Rebirth if they did it,
Well,
and it would probably be a remaster, not a remake.
the other thing I might propose to put out in between Rebirth and whatever part 3 is, so that Dirge of Cerberus comes out after part 3. Fucking do a remake, or at the very least make it accessible in general before Crisis, because that never came west and it's essentially lost media because it was only playable on Japanese flip phones, and no one has a Japanese flip phone anymore. So it's pretty much
Wow.
lost media. The other thing, Jason, you forgot about is Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, which I am
Wow.
regrettably
Is that the shooter one, the third person
no.
shooter one?
No, that the Dirge of Cerberus is the third person
No.
shooter.
I know Dirge was a third person shooter. There was another game that came out
Oh, you're
recently.
thinking of the First Soldier.
Yeah, never mind.
No,
Right, sorry.
the first soldier shut down, but Ever Crisis does have an original storyline for the first soldier that is adapting currently.
Wow.
It's a game that I regrettably play every day, guys. Don't worry, it's one that I will never make you guys play.
Thanks.
It's kind of hard to make content around that one.
Yeah.
So you're off the hook, Jason. For that, not for the rest of the compilation. Don't you worry. There's more to come. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
All I was gonna say was I'm mostly indifferent, so if or apathetic. So if that's what you want to do, all on board. Yay!
Um. Okay. I mean, yeah. There we have it. You guys want to bring up anything else before we wrap this bad boy up?
No,
Jason,
I don't
No.
think so.
you got a Quasnicki rating, or do you not do DLC? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to write because it's only 2 chapters. It's very short. If you're just doing
Okay.
the story, it's like 4 to 5 hours.
All right.
It,
Well,
it, it's kind of just part of the like a slotted into the base remake. So whatever my score was for the remake applies here, I guess.
yeah, like it will be remembered as just eventually people aren't going to buy the PS4 version that doesn't have it included. They're just going to buy the PS5 version that does. So it kind of just gets folded in there in that way. All right, Delilah, you got anything to plug?
Not really. I mean, I do YouTube stuff sometimes. What did I do recently? Oh, I played the demo for Rebirth on
Oh,
there.
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure we could do a whole discussion about that, but probably best just to save that for the Rebirth episode that's coming down the pipeline at some
Yeah,
point.
plus there's gonna be a Junon
Yeah, yeah.
demo.
There will be more to the demo. I
I
do have.
haven't even looked at anything about the demo. Is that content something that's not going to be in the game?
No, it
No, it
will.
will be. It will be.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, just at this point, Jason, for you, I would just wait.
Yeah, I
Because I'm
had no
also
plans to play it.
there's some things in the demo that I kind of take issue with, and I hope
Me
that they're
too.
a little better in the final release. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
we shall see soon enough. All right. If you listened to this episode and you enjoyed it, thank you so much. Please, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube, whatever you do with an audio show like this, I think you listen to it. I'm pretty sure that's what you do. If you listen on YouTube, thank you so much. Please leave us a comment, like the show, subscribe to the channel. Let us know what did you like, what did you not like about this episode or this DLC. Leave us a comment. Just let us know. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you so much. Please rate and review the show if you haven't. 5 stars are preferred. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. And can I just say, if the one thing you don't like about the show is Jason's hot takes, please don't give us 1 star if you still like Delilah and I. Like at the very least, give us 3. Um, that's all. That's the only begging I'm gonna do. That's it. That's all I got to say about that.
To reinforce that, feel free to lay into me in the comments.
Yeah, like you could leave a review saying I don't like Jason, but I like Mark and Delilah. That's fine. I don't really
That's
care
fine.
if you do that. And I know Jason doesn't either. But don't give us 1 star if you like 2/3 of the show. It really helps with visibility if
Also,
like
you shouldn't dislike a person for having a different opinion than you. That's weird.
yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms that I'm not willing
That's
to.
that's the story of humanity right there.
Maybe
I
we need to do Reap the Spoils, the spoiler cast, and go into just the intricacies of this dynamic. I don't know.
Human nature. Yeah.
yeah.
Normally I have one of you say what we're talking about today, and the other say what we're talking about next week. But Delilah, if you don't mind, I really want to torture Jason by having him also
Yeah,
announce what we're
sure.
talking about
Let
next week.
let him let those words slip off his tongue.
Yeah, I gotta
Jason.
watch Advent Children.
Yeah!
I
Woo!
have watched it, but I gotta watch it again, unfortunately.
Yes. Hey, I don't know if this episode will be up in time, but Advent Children will be in theaters February 21st and 22nd. I am going to see it in theaters. I'm so excited. I don't need to. I have like 7 copies of that movie. But I'm going to a theater to see it cuz it never came to theaters in the West.
And
So
hey,
I'm
Yeah.
you're
very excited.
excited, Mark. You're excited. You're happy. That makes me happy.
Oh, see, how could you not like this guy? He's the best. He really is so great.
I'm in the
Yes.
trenches taking grenades here, while y'all get to be
To be
Yeah.
fair, I have problems with this movie, but
Oh yeah. Oh no, guys. All right, all right. If I'll save most of this for the episode, but
yeah.
Advent Children is not a good movie,
No.
but it's a movie I love a whole lot.
Yeah, it's like the Super Mario original movie. Like it's so dumb, but it's great.
It's like I'm really excited to talk about it. I don't like this is not it's not like it's not a 10 out of 10. It's not even like a 7
hey
out of
man,
10.
Michael
No.
Bay Transformers.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. It's just a fun movie, especially if you're a fan of Final Fantasy VII. So yeah, next episode, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. It's a movie this time. It's like, you could rent it anywhere. It's pretty cheap to get on Blu-ray. We will be watching the Advent Children complete because that has more scenes, stuff that never should have been cut from the movie, and thank God it was added back in an eventual cut. Um, So yeah, we'll be talking about that next time. I hope you tune in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Delilah actually said bye this time.
You heard me. I always say it, but you heard me. That's why I said it
Yeah.
nice and loud.
Cool.